Right, it's the new year, so it's time to look forward and get excited for new games coming down the line, because even if it's something like a show, movie, or video game, having things to look forward to can be just that little bit extra motivation to keep going. So let's see what video games have my attention in 2025. Cabernet is a narrative RPG coming out in the first quarter of 2025, where you play as a young vampire called Lisa. It takes place in a world inspired by Eastern Europe in the 19th century, and you'll have to balance her hunger for blood with the lives of those around her, navigating politics, corruption, and social conflict. This also involves making sure you don't become a complete monster despite your vampirism. Or not. But you will, nonetheless, need cunning and skill to get your meals. Now, I am very much biased in that I will usually perk up if a game lets me play as a woman. Adding vampires to the equation is a surefire way to catch my attention, so when I first saw this game while mindlessly scrolling on TikTok, I immediately switched to the Steam mobile app to wishlist it. If you're always on the lookout for new and interesting vampire games, I'd say this looks like a fine addition to your collection. Now this just seems like some good absurdist fun, and it has Laura Bailey in it, among many others, which I'm always happy to see. If you don't know, Date Everything is somehow exactly and not at all what it sounds like. It's a dating sim, of course, but instead of an expected cast of people out in the world, your romance options are household items and appliances given human form, and personality thanks to a magical pair of glasses called Dateviators. There are 100 dateable characters who are all fully voice-acted, and there are 3 endings to each character, depending on if you become friends, enemies, or lovers. It's very silly, doesn't seem to take itself seriously, and I'm looking forward to it as it rather fittingly releases on Valentine's Day. I have a lot of good memories playing Killing Floor and its sequel, so I'm curious about the new horrible enemies we'll have to face in the third installment, ranging from the various grim faces of the shock troops to the visually upsetting body horror of the spider-human crawlers, all the way up to the new improved versions of the brutal Fleshpound and Scrake. If you are unaware, the Killing Floor games are PvE arena fights where you and 5 other people hold out against increasingly difficult waves of enemies, usually capped off with a boss fight. In the original game, it was just the Patriarch, a man called Kevin Clamley, who started the catastrophic mess the players deal with. See, Kevin was the CEO of Horzine, which is just Umbrella Corp with the serial numbers filed off. It was a British biotech company tasked by the government to create super soldiers, and oopsie-daisy, that backfired horrifically when Kevin tried to clone his dead son, failed, and decided to see all the super soldier clones as his new children. I mean, he had an entire daughter who was still alive and could have done with some attention, but let's do delusional clone soldier apocalypse instead. Regardless, the second game added a handful more bosses and variants of the original enemies to diversify what we were up against. So instead of just the shock troops, the clots, the most basic enemy, we also had to deal with their more feral and ferocious brothers, the slashers. It was here that Horzine tried to save face by hiring mercenary groups to clean up their mess, blaming it all on Kevin despite how thoroughly involved they were, which seems to have worked out great for them because in Killing Floor 3 we're getting shoved into a horrific cyberpunk future where Horzine has taken over the world and their clone soldier designs have matured into full biomechanical horrors. And I can't wait to fight them while wearing the least practical or tonally appropriate outfits into battle.
You can't fight crime if you ain't cute.
Oh, Bloodlines 2. It might be some ill-fated optimism for things that will happen in 2025, but maybe we'll finally get the Bloodlines sequel that was announced back in 2019. Things started out very promising, with an interesting premise, a lively Discord server, and they even had multiple people from the original game on board. But then it suffered from some catastrophic chicanery behind the scenes that led to lead writer Brian Mitsoda and creative director Kai Clooney being terminated in a joint decision between the leaderships of developer Hardsuit Labs and the publisher Paradox Interactive. Cara Ellison, a senior writer brought on by Mitsoda, also left the project. And according to Mitsoda, this termination came out of nowhere. He'd been given no indication that the higher-ups were unhappy with his work, and stressed that the multiple delays to the game were not because of the narrative team. To say this was received badly is an understatement. The Discord was on fire, people were trying to put it out or cover their asses, and it wasn't clear just what the hell had happened to cause this drastic turn of events. A sticking point for a lot of people was the treatment of Mitsoda as someone with severe social anxiety. It seemed rather callous to repeatedly trot him out for panels and interviews to lend legitimacy to the project as lead writer of the original, only to unceremoniously nix him from it like deadweight. The project was put on life support for a while until Hardsuit Labs were replaced with the Chinese Room to salvage a serviceable game from the wreckage rather than throw away all that work. Do I think the Chinese Room can make something out of this setting? 100%. They are a skilled team and their ability to craft a gripping narrative is unquestionable. Ask me how hard I can cry after playing Still Wakes the Deep. However, is my excitement for the game more of a candle than a bonfire? Yes, I want it to be good. I was interested in playing as a Thin Blood in Mitsoda's concept, which I know a lot of people were not jazzed about because how am I supposed to be a cool powerhouse of a character in this RPG if I'm a weak little Thin Blood? And I assumed that was the goddamn point. Start weak, get strong by diablerie, which for the unaware is the act of a vampire feeding on another stronger vampire. And if the game does turn out good, it'll be coloured by what happened before and the incessant shrieking of those types, because the protagonist is androgynous and they hate anything that doesn't look like all the default selections in character creation. I'm wishing the Chinese Room all the luck I can possibly spare. I'm delighted to see the slow trickle of Stardew-like games with a dark edge, and whether it's more Addams Family or Silence of the Lambs, I want to see what people do with the concept of adding a horror element to an otherwise cozy setting. Grimshire is about feeding an isolated mountain village of anthropomorphic animals in the midst of what appears to be some kind of zombie apocalypse? You as the player barely escaped your hometown alive and are taken in by the villagers, allowed to refurbish an old farmhouse to stay in. You're tasked with keeping the root cellar stocked in preparation for the plague, as it will eventually catch up to you. Grave Seasons, meanwhile, sees you tending a farm and also trying to figure out the identity of an active serial killer in town, which could be anyone up to and including someone you romance. Whether that works out for you is yet to be seen, but the drama of it all should be delicious. Okay, you've seen my videos on the first Dying Light, you know I love the game, and I greatly enjoyed playing Dying Light 2, despite the cries of certain negative voices online trying to convince me that Luan was just the meanest, nastiest character ever. It turns out she just has trauma and isn't bending over backwards to be nice to you. Color me surprised. Anyway, I really enjoyed the Tragedy of Dying Light's The Following DLC, so I am extremely curious to see what they've done with my boy Crane in the intervening years, as he appears to be some sort of hybrid between human and volatile now. Moreover, I want to know how they thread the line between Dying Light the Beast and The Following, because Dying Light 2 already bulldozed its endings, and instead of the fall of world civilization happening because Crane refused the nuclear option, it happened because after the Haran outbreak was contained by the GRE, who caused it to begin with, they decided to continue messing with the virus and caused a much larger outbreak that went global. I found this, somewhat baffling. See, I'm used to creating my own idea of what happened when a story takes a turn that I don't like, which in creative fandom spaces is usually called a headcanon, and personally I simply would have had it that Crane inadvertently causes the global outbreak, GRE scrambles to get a handle on it, leading to the walled cities, the hospitals and research facilities, etc., which eventually leads to Crane's capture and experimentation, because saying actually they contained it, life briefly returned to normal, only the GRE fucked it up again, is just very unnecessary, like we're padding the story for some reason. It would have been much simpler for the GRE to slander Crane, blame Rias, and swoop in like the heroes valiantly trying to save everyone until only a few people were left who knew the truth. Anyway, I'm still excited about the Beast because Techland makes fun games and I will simply pick and choose what to file away in my personal canon. I mean, I'm legally obligated to play it at this point, so But no, I'm genuinely looking forward to it, especially with the addition of co-op, which will probably do absolutely nothing for my phobias. The effort is appreciated nonetheless. I enjoyed the handcrafted worlds, lore, and creature designs immensely in the last games, and I'm particularly interested in learning anything else about the architects. For some unholy reason, this game was another one that got dragged into the deeply stupid crusade of God's most annoying soldiers, complaining that it's
woke
and tailored to a
modern audience.
in derogatory air quotes because neither protagonist is white. Those of you who have actually played the previous games will remember that none of the protagonists have been white either. It's almost like those people are insincere grifters trying to make you feel attacked and like this is a much bigger and wider spread issue than it really is, so you stay angry and miserable because that's how they keep your attention and get paid. Just play whatever games spark joy, you nerd. I thoroughly enjoyed the 2016 reboot and its follow-up Doom Eternal. I find the satisfying weight of the glory kills is hard to replicate elsewhere, and while most games are power fantasies, few of them make you feel as utterly unstoppable as when you play the Doom guy. Dark Ages looks to be amping up everything from the previous games with a techno-medieval twist as we get to see just how the Doomslayer became what he is. There's a boomerang chainsaw shield, a cyborg dragon you can fly and kill demons with. I mean, you are crushing skulls to use as ammunition here. Metal, sick, rip and tear, rip and tear. Please go listen to the Miracle of Sound song Big Guts and Bigger Guns, because I did while I was writing this and it perfectly encapsulated the vibe of Doom Eternal. So good. Can't wait for the Dark Ages. And with that, we have officially entered 2025. I hope all of you achieve your goals, improve upon yourselves, and find what helps you thrive despite it all. But even for those of you who feel too tired and worn down to shoot for the stars, remember that just surviving day to day is still an achievement. You deserve to be here too. Thank you for watching, and special shout out to my supporters on Patreon who are all very handsome people. If you would also like to be called a very handsome people, check out the link in the description where you can support me from just £1 a month. I also stream on Twitch every Wednesday at 8 PM British time. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a cheeky wee comment telling me what you're excited for this year. Thank you again for watching, don't forget to drink your water, take your medication, and treat yourselves kindly, and I will see you all next time. You love her, a haunted house, or could you love